The secrets you try to hide will bite you in time.
You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke McKenna, and today's video is about the Alyssa Bustamante case. Now, nothing can prepare you for the feeling of a family member disappearing, but it's gonna feel even less real when a confession is found in, of all places, a diary. This case just goes to show that evil can take form in many different ages and bodies, and it doesn't necessarily have a perfect blueprint on how to look for evil. So this is the story of the teen who bragged in her diary about killing. By the way, I post so much content like this. In fact, I did a whole month last month just of true crime like this, so I will leave it down below if you would like to listen to those, and I would really appreciate your thumbs up and to share this case if you would like. Now let's get back to the story. It was 2009 in St. Martin's, Missouri, and a 9-year-old girl named Elizabeth Olten wanted to go play at the Bustamante household. This is something that she did often. They were neighbors, and there were little kids at that house that she would go play with. Now on Wednesday, October 21st of that year, she had one of the Bustamante little girls come over to her house, knock on the door, and ask if she could play. Now, Elizabeth was supposed to be running lines for a play she was in. Her mom was almost done cooking dinner, and so her mom said no at first. But after the girls came in and they were kind of jumping up and down and begging for her to be able to go play, the mother finally said yes, but only for an hour, and it was 5 p.m. at that time, so she was to be home at 6 p.m. But you see, when 6 p.m. rolled around, there was no sign of Elizabeth back at her house, and her mom was deeply concerned because her daughter was so incredibly afraid of the dark, and the sun set at 6:30, so she knew that her daughter would be home if she could. And that is when she called the Bustamante household and asked if she was still there, to which they responded, no, she had never been there. Her mother immediately called the police, and they got searching almost 15 minutes later, searching the grounds, but they were finding no sign of foul play. Elizabeth thankfully did have a phone, and so they decided to go ahead and ping it to see the last location that it pinged off of, and they found that it was in the woods behind both of these houses, kind of like in the middle in their neighborhood. But it was this huge area that they would need to search, and so that's when the FBI got involved. They went to search the Bustamante household as well as talk to all of the children there to see if they knew anything. The little girl whose name was Emma, who had gone over to ask Elizabeth to play, was questioned, and she said that she watched Elizabeth walk home after they were done playing, and she didn't know what happened. But later on, she changed her story to she got caught in the thorn bushes and had to call for her older sister Alyssa to come get her. That is when they focused their attention on Alyssa, who had skipped school that day and was very calm in all of this questioning, but ultimately she was deemed not a suspect. That is until they found something very incriminating. They found a hole behind the Bustamante house in the shape of a small grave. When they asked them about it, Alyssa said she just liked to dig graves. And then the 15-year-old Alyssa had a diary that was found in her bedroom. And after they saw what was inside, they knew something was very wrong, because the last entry was scribbled out so desperately as though she never wanted anyone to read what she had written. Thankfully, though, they could put a bright light behind these pages and kind of see a few of the words, which were incriminating enough to talk to her again. And that is when Alyssa confessed to them that yes, she had been with Elizabeth that day, and she had tripped on a rock while they were walking through the woods and died. They asked her to tell the truth, basically, and said that the autopsy would tell everything they needed to know, so she needed to as well. And that's when they asked her, was her throat cut? And Alyssa said yes, something she hadn't previously said before. That is when her grandmother, her legal guardian, left the room in just a nauseated state. And Alyssa told them that she had actually told her little sister Emma to go to the Olten household that day to ask for Elizabeth to come play. And then Alyssa took Elizabeth to the woods, to the shallow grave, another shallow grave that she had dug her within those woods, and she killed her. She brought her there by saying she had a surprise for her that was just waiting a little bit longer. But what she would say next would be the most repulsive thinking that could ever come out of anyone's mouth, especially a child's. She said the reason she killed Elizabeth was because she wanted to see the light in her eyes go out. It was found that in her bedroom there was writings all over the walls, some of them in blood. There was a poem that said, "I cut to see blood because I like it. I don't like to cut, but I can't give up." There was also something that said it was written in blood. It was written in blood, and it actually was. But the worst thing of all on her wall was that there was a picture of a human with cuts and blood all over it, and there was an identifying name right next to it saying Emma, her own sister. Also in her diary that the confession had been found in, she had written previously about wanting to set the house on fire and killing everyone inside. But the actual entry about Elizabeth's murder said, "I just effing killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them, and now they're dead. I don't know how to feel at the moment. It was amazing. As soon as you get over the, oh my god, I can't do this feeling, it's pretty enjoyable. I'm kind of nervous and shaky though right now. Okay, I gotta go to church now. LOL." In court, Alyssa confessed that she had strangled her multiple times before stabbing her 7 times in the chest and slitting her throat. In 2012, she accepted a plea deal to avoid the death penalty and have a chance for parole. The defense tried to say that her troubled childhood should grant her leniency and that her whole confession should be thrown out because some of the questioning they did back then for a juvenile was illegal under Missouri law. But she was tried as an adult, and Alyssa had stuff to say to the family at court. She would go on the stand and she would say, "I cannot even understand what you guys are going through. I'm sorry for that. If I could give my life to bring her back, I would, and I'm sorry." But Elizabeth's family, the Olten family, did not believe her one bit and believed that she was being fed exactly what to say. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole and another 30 years for armed criminal action. And under Missouri law, she will stay in jail for a minimum of 35 years before she can have parole. The Olten family then sued her to make sure she could never profit off her crime, and they also sued a hospital that Alyssa stayed at that should have seen the warning signs that she was a much bigger danger than anybody could have ever imagined, because they did see those signs and they didn't act upon it. But we will get to that in a moment. So what was Alyssa's motive? Was it really a desire to kill? And if so, was she just born like that? Some say that it is her childhood, who she grew up with, and that was her mother, who overdosed when she was 6 years old, and her father at that time was in prison for assault. Before that, at some point, she was actually abandoned by her mother for a while, but after this happened at 8 years old, Alyssa and her other siblings moved in to her grandmother's house, and there it was a stable environment, and she would get A's and B's at school. She was thought to be a pretty normal kid, and her friends said about her, she was always so sweet and everybody loved her. She was just amazing. Then when she was 13 years old, she actually tried to end her life, and she was sent to a psychiatric hospital for 10 days after that, and once she got out, she continued therapy and was put on antidepressants. She seemed very put together on the outside after that, and she would do all the normal activities, but on the inside, it was like a completely different person. She would post online just awful creepy pictures, and no, that doesn't make anybody crazy, but she was doing some very harmful things to herself, and she would write in her bios on the internet that her hobbies were killing people and cutting. She would talk about hating authority and that bad decisions made good stories. And once at a party, she even asked if anyone else wondered what it would be like to kill someone. Then in 2009, Alyssa was diagnosed with depression and was showing signs of antisocial personality disorder, or being a sociopath. And at this time, a panel of psychiatrists were, like weeks before this ever happened, were coming together to try to decide if she needed to be put away permanently. That was the whole idea, was that she was a danger and needed to be possibly put away forever. They either believed she was a danger to herself or a danger to others, or possibly both. That is the only reason why they would believe she needed to be locked up away from society and away from things that could harm anyone. And unfortunately, they didn't get this done in time, or they decided that it wasn't necessary, it wasn't that big of a risk, and they didn't need to rush the process, but they were very wrong. And a few weeks later, she had taken a poor, innocent life of a child. So do you believe this hospital was just as much to blame as Alyssa was? Psychiatrists, therapists, anyone in that field, they don't necessarily want to jump to the first conclusion that they've come to. And that can be great. Of course, you don't want to misdiagnose someone, but I think that they often don't want to diagnose anybody at all because it's more money, it's more time, it's more resources. And also, a lot of the times, the family members don't want that, and they want their kid to be normal. They don't want them to have to be locked away forever. But the thing is, no matter how much it takes away from the family, no matter how much it takes away from the resources, there are lives that could be saved if they would just go with their gut and the proof that they see. She should have been getting more help than she was, because as much as it sounds crazy that we want to help someone who is having those thoughts, it's essential because they're not in their right mind with a mental illness, and we are essentially saving the people who they could harm from them by helping them. And so I think if we're just going to be scared to put a label on someone like that, to diagnose them with something, we need to make sure that we're doing everything possible to keep the people around them safe, the people they could come in contact with safe, and them safe from themselves while we make those decisions. There needs to be kind of a middle ground, a place where they can be in limbo before this decision is finalized, because I'm not saying we should just throw people in mental institutes or lock them up if they're showing signs of something, but there needs to be a middle ground to keep people safe, or otherwise this is just going to keep happening. Because I think a lot of times we're scared to say that these people can be as evil as they are, and especially kids. I have seen so many times where psychiatrists, and I know this from firsthand experience, not from me but from someone in my personal life, that psychiatrists don't want to look at kids and say that they are evil. They don't want to say that they could ever be thinking these thoughts or ever do these things, and the only time that they realize that they could is after they do. And we need to stop that stigma, because they may be kids. All killers start somewhere, and I will never stop saying that in these videos about child killers, because I wholeheartedly believe it, and it's something that I am so very passionate about, making it known to the world. Never be fooled by a smiling, cute kid face. Some of them are innocent, but some of them are not. Just like with adults. But before I get too fired up about this case, I would really love to hear your opinions about it down below. Do you think that Alyssa should have gotten more than just a minimum of 35 years before she can be paroled? I mean, I guess for a kid that young, that is a long time, but it also doesn't mean she's going to be locked away forever, and that can be very scary. So I hope they definitely look into it very hard before they parole her or give her the chance to at all. But do you think that the hospital and the doctors should be blamed for not seeing it sooner and not preventing it from happening? Let me know down below. Always be kind with your comments, because I am very, very respectful of your opinions. I think that as long as you are kind with them, then we can all have different opinions. So just make sure you are respectful to everybody, including the Bustamante and the Olten families, and just to each other down there as well. That's what I love to see, is this community raising each other up and raising awareness and not attacking anybody. But make sure to thumbs up and share this video, because I do put so much effort into telling these stories, and I just really like to see these victims of these solved cases get a voice and get their stories told more than it is normally told, because they deserve that if they had to leave this life so early. Don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.